So recently I caught up to JoJo's Bizarre Adventure and I loved it. I want to give back to the JoJo's community, and I thought what better way to do that than by answering the age-old question. What's your favorite JoJo's part? A variation of this question is probably the most asked question in the JoJo's community, and I knew about this before even I got into JoJo's because I used to have friends that were into JoJo's. They watched the anime, they read the manga, and when they found somebody else who was into JoJo's, when they found somebody else who watched the anime, read the manga, that was usually the first thing that left their mouth. Hey, what's your favorite JoJo's part? And then they would talk about a whole bunch of numbers that I didn't understand nor care of because I thought anime was for kids at the time. Now look at me. So now that I caught up, I figured, look, I'm not a real JoJo's fan until I rank every single part. And it wasn't easy. I promise you it was not easy. I want to give a little bit of context before I get into the list. If I could separate this list, it would be into 3 different tiers. The top tier is going to be the peakest of the peak, the 100% pure, unadulterated cinema. The middle tier is going to be, this was amazing. This was phenomenal. There are a couple flaws in it, but for the most part, amazingness. And then the bottom tier is gonna be, this was a good part. it was a good part. I liked it. It was enjoyable because as of right now, and this could change if more parts get adapted, although I doubt it, but as of right now, there's not a single JoJo's part that I think is bad. There's not a single JoJo's part that I dislike. So I don't feel like there's a need to add any more tiers than there needs to be. Like, I feel like this is pretty simplified. So let's kick this off with the bottom tier. Bottom tier is such funny vernacular for it because bottom tier, you would think it's bad. The bottom tier is literally, let's get into the good tier. In my opinion, and this list is obviously going to be my opinion, the worst JoJo's part is Phantom Blood. I will give Phantom Blood a little bit of credit before I go further and talk about its flaws. I think Phantom Blood could be interchangeable with the next part that I have up. And I'm not joking when I say that, but we'll get to that part when we get to it, right? For right now, we're talking about Phantom Blood. It was a very enjoyable watch. I thought it was a really good introduction to JoJo's, but that's really what it feels like now looking back at Phantom Blood. It just feels like a sample of what JoJo's could be and will become in later parts, but Phantom Blood in itself in a vacuum, is it all that peak? No, it's a good little part to watch. I could see myself rewatching Phantom Blood here and there. I do love the aesthetic of Phantom Blood. Phantom Blood might have my second favorite aesthetic. It has that old school anime vibe. It is the oldest part, of course. So I love the feel, the aesthetic, the vibe, the look of Phantom Blood. Loved it. You could also argue it might be the most important JoJo's part. I mean, it literally kicked off the entire series. And it does have Hamon, which I mentioned before. I do think is charming, although I do think stands are superior. So part 1 has a lot going for it, but the bottom line is it is 9 episodes long, and that's not to say that an anime is bad or just not as good as longer anime. I mean, Takopi's Original Sin is 6 episodes long, and it's already one of the greatest things I've ever seen in my life, so you don't need a lot of episodes to be good. Phantom Blood could have been, honestly, it could have been the best part with only 9 episodes, but this was Araki's first attempt at JoJo, so of course it's gonna be rough around the edges. The stakes weren't as high, the side characters weren't as good, the power system wasn't as good. If you care about animation, of course the animation wasn't as good. I personally don't. In terms of main antagonist, yeah, Dio is the best antagonist in all of JoJo's in my opinion, but I would argue that a lot of Dio's greatness is not because of part 1. It's a little difficult to explain. Yeah, we get Dio's origin story in part 1. It's phenomenal, of course, but I think some of the things that makes Dio one of my favorite antagonists in all the JoJo's is number 1, the surprise factor of, oh my gosh, this guy's alive, but that's not in part 1. That's only hinted at the end of part 2, confirmed in part 3. I would say the other thing that makes Dio so great of an antagonist in my eyes is just how involved he is in every single part after part 1. I'm looking at it like a vacuum, right? Had Dio just died in part 1, had that just been the end of Dio, it would have been okay, cool. But the point I'm trying to make is there's a reason as to why I finished part 1, and I was wondering, is that all? Is that it for Dio? Because I had heard so much talk about Dio being one of the greatest antagonists in anime, one of the greatest antagonists of all time, and now that I finished JoJo's, yeah, I do agree, but by the end of part 1, I was wondering, is that it? There's no way that can be it. Surely he's alive because I wanted more. And of course we got more, and that's why I think Dio's one of the greatest. But part 1 left me wanting more. It didn't actually give me more. Does that make sense? Maybe I'm stupid, but I think that right there perfectly describes why I think part 1 is the worst, air quotes, part in all of JoJo's. It left me wanting more. That's actually why I think it's such a good introduction to JoJo's, because then of course it was followed by peak and whatever. Anywho, the second JoJo's part that I have in the it was good category is actually Stardust Crusaders. And I feel like having Stardust Crusaders this low is gonna get this video like disliked bomb. People are gonna comment how stupid and silly I am, and this is such a silly take. But despite that, I'm gonna say something about Stardust Crusaders that might get me even more canceled in the JoJo's community, because I know that this is a beloved part. I think Phantom Blood could be better. I think there is a good world. There is a good possibility for Phantom Blood to be better than Stardust Crusaders in my eyes, right? It depends on the day, it depends how I feel. The more I was talking about Phantom Blood, the more I was like, actually, I really liked Phantom Blood. It might be better than Stardust Crusaders. I don't know. At the time that I made this list, I had Stardust Crusaders number 5. I'm sticking with it because the peaks of Stardust Crusaders are way too good, way better than Phantom Blood. But I'll explain to you my thought process. The way that I look at Phantom Blood, yeah, it wasn't as good, the peaks weren't as high, but I still look at Phantom Blood like 9 episodes of really good JoJo's. It's short, it's sweet, it's not the best, but I like it. Like, there's a special place for Phantom Blood in my heart, right? Stardust Crusaders, I look at it like, there's maybe like a good, 18, 19, maybe even 20 episodes of Stardust Crusaders that's like really good. But then there's like just the other half, and it might be more than half. I'm trying to be generous here, where it's just like, are we really watching this? Like, am I watching this? Do I care? I don't really care. I don't think it's bad, except for the Alessi fight. Somebody commented, for somebody who doesn't think about the Alessi fight, you sure do mention it a lot. Yeah, you're right. I do mention it a lot. It's bad. But yeah, the villain of the week formula about part 3, I wasn't really a fan of it. So I can see why people love part 3. Because if you're a fan of that villain of the week formula, if you're just a fan of stand fights, this is the part where stands were introduced. Like, I know that this is like a highly exalted JoJo's part, and if you're one for stand fights, this is probably the greatest thing since sliced bread for you. But I'm not one for just like mindlessly fighting people that I don't really have any attachment to. Granted, I still think Stardust Crusaders is better than Solo Leveling, but I'm so passionate about this villain of the week formula thing because it's the one aspect about Stardust Crusaders that is holding it back, because it should be one of the best JoJo's part. Like, this should be a top 2 part in JoJo's, but it's a bottom 2 part because we have all these different antagonists that they're just kind of silly, and they're popping up and they're acting like they're gonna beat some ass and they're gonna kick our antagonists behind and they're gonna send them back to where they came from, and Joseph's mom is gonna die. But it's like, I know that you will not last more than 2 episodes in this anime, and you will never be heard from again. So stop coming on my screen, taking up my time, taking up the crew's time. Jotaro, Joseph, Avdol, Polnareff, Kakyoin, stop taking up their time acting like you're gonna do something to them when you're not. Like, the nerve of these characters to come on screen and just take up 2-3 episodes worth of screen time. And it's like, first of all, you look stupid. Second of all, your stand isn't even cool. Third of all, why is Polnareff naked as a baby? Like, this is so weird. I will give credit to where credit is due. Like, there are some cool stands that are able to make up for the fact that these characters are literally so irrelevant. I always bring this up, but the Darby stand fight, I thought the Darby stand fight is so cool. I mean, Darby is just as irrelevant as the rest of them, but at least the stand fight was cool, in my opinion. If there were more cool stand fights, then maybe I wouldn't be so mad about the villain of the week formula, because it's like, hey, here's an epic stand to compensate for the fact that these guys are literally nobodies. But most of them have pretty mediocre stands on top of that, because of course the good stand ideas are going to be saved for the characters that are actually pertinent to the story. But anyways, that really is my only gripe with part 3. Every other facet is really good to phenomenal in my opinion. Like, the whole plot of Jotaro being kind of cruel to his mother and being cold, but she knows that he's a kind-hearted boy, and we see that he is kind-hearted because he's willing to go all the way to Egypt in order to, kill Dio and save his mom. Love that whole plot line. The final battle with Dio in itself is still one of the greatest stand fights in all of JoJo's. The Vanilla Ice fight, in my opinion, that is the best stand fight from any antagonist that is not the main antagonist. We even have Joseph in this part, and Joseph in every single part that he's in does a lot of heavy lifting because he is one of the best characters in the entire series. Like, I don't know how part 3 somehow managed to make it as the second worst JoJo's part in my eyes, because if I do the math and I put it on paper, this is the JoJo's part with the best antagonist in the entire series, the best main cast in the entire series, some phenomenal world building, arguably the best fight in the entire series, the introduction of the best power system in the entire series, the best dog in the entire series. I love Iggy. Like this is such a good part, and there is so much that really should put this as like number one, but it's all of that fluff and filler. I say filler light because I know it's canon, but it really detracts from the main plot line, which is getting to Egypt and whooping Dio's ass, and it just takes away from what should be one of the best JoJo's part. It's so difficult for me to explain because I don't even view Stardust Crusaders as missed potential, because all the potential was executed to perfection. That Dio versus Jotaro fight was perfection. I'll leave it at this, right? I'll leave it at this because I really believe this. I think Stardust Crusaders could have been one of my favorite JoJo's part, like top 3, maybe even top 2, if nothing changed and they just removed a majority of the stand fights in the middle. That might be like a harsh critique. If you just completely deleted the anime, maybe I would like it. I'm not saying delete the anime, but if it was just shorter and you didn't touch the main plot line at all, because all of that I really view to be so good, but just make it a little bit shorter. I don't know, felt like a lot of those stand fights kind of dragged on, didn't need to, but I feel like I talked enough about Stardust Crusader. That might be like my most passionate take of this entire video, but I don't know, maybe some of y'all that follow my channel saw it coming. I do name literally every JoJo's part. This JoJo's part is peak cinema. This JoJo's part is phenomenal. It's so good. And then the Stardust Crusaders video was like, well, you know, how good was it actually, right? Like, how good was it actually? Maybe it was a little indicator that maybe I wasn't the biggest fan of this part, but I digress. And now that I'm done with those two JoJo's parts, we can move on to the second category in this video, which is great JoJo's parts, like actual amazing watches. The two parts in this tier were really hard for me to judge at first, but the more that I thought about it, the more that I sat on it, the longer my opinion skewed one way. So in my opinion, the fourth best JoJo's part is Stone Ocean. I don't want to get killed for this take. I was just talking about how much I love Stone Ocean, and all of it is true. So when you see Stone Ocean here at number 4, that doesn't mean that I think it's like it's bad. Yeah, it's closer to the bottom, but you got to realize there is a massive gap between Phantom Blood, Stardust Crusaders, and then the rest of JoJo's, in my opinion. Because funny enough, even though Stone Ocean is the fourth best JoJo's part in my eyes, Stone Ocean is closer to my number 1 spot than it is to my number 6 spot. I'll leave it at that. I think it's undeniable that Stone Ocean had a like one of the best antagonists. Pucci was so good, and the finale to Stone Ocean was actually just mind-blowing. Every single episode of that third batch of Stone Ocean was like peak JoJo's. Like, it doesn't get better than that. But I think the issue with Stone Ocean is very similar to the issue with Stardust Crusaders, to a much lesser extent, I'll say. There's a handful of episodes towards the beginning of Stone Ocean that's just difficult to get behind, because it's the same problem of introducing antagonists that we just I don't care about. Okay, I won't say we, but it's difficult for me to care about a villain when really the only appealing thing about this villain is their stand, and a lot of them don't even have interesting stands to begin with, because again, the interesting ones are given to the characters that are actually worth talking about. I'll say, at least with Stone Ocean, it feels like each stand fight does have a little win at the end, like Jolene overcoming jailhouse lock, which actually allows her to leave the prison. That's a pretty important detail, you know. Jolene and Jotaro teaming up at the beginning of Stone Ocean and then becoming closer. Jolene and Weather Report teaming up. Hermes and her stand fight where she gets revenge for her sister. Like, at least with these stand fights, we get these little wins that progress the story ever so slightly or build up characters. So naturally, I believe that these stand fights hold a little bit more value than the ones in Stardust Crusaders, because even though they might not be interesting, they might not be the most hype flashy fights, they might not be the best written antagonists in the world, at least we get something out of these fights, and it doesn't just feel like we took up 2 episodes worth of time and then boom, on to the next, like that just never happened. So I give Stone Ocean props to that, and honestly every single part after Stardust Crusaders, because I think it's pretty clear that Araki became better at writing these intermittent in stand fights. Also, one of the biggest things holding Stone Ocean back for me is I think it does have one of the worst main cast in all of JoJo's. That sounds really bad. I actually like the characters individually. I said that in my Stone Ocean video. But when the Stone Ocean cast is together, they don't really bring the same joy to my screen as, say, Stardust Crusaders or Golden Wind. The Stone Ocean cast is kind of like the most, depressing to watch. That sounds bad. But seriously, one of the things that I came to appreciate when I got done watching JoJo's was just like the sheer amount of goofiness, the whimsy of these characters, right? The joy that they brought. And then come Stone Ocean and these characters, they have none of that. Like, where did your whimsy go, right? It might be the most depressing JoJo's part. Granted, I think that writing wise, plot wise, it might be the best JoJo's part. Like, it was really well written. But in my eyes, enjoyability encompasses more than just writing. Like, I'm not a machine. I'm not looking at this like, yup, this is objectively the best written JoJo's part, therefore it's my favorite. There's more to enjoyability than writing. And I gotta stop myself there because I'm making it sound as if I didn't enjoy Stone Ocean. I did. But in comparison to the rest of JoJo's, like, we gotta take into consideration that we're comparing this to the rest of JoJo's, and all of JoJo's was entertaining from start to bottom. I will say the dynamic with Dio and Poochie was I loved it. I loved every time Poochie was on screen, every time Dio was on screen. I think Poochie did a lot of heavy lifting here in Stone Ocean because I can say without a shadow of a doubt that if Poochie was on screen, I enjoyed Stone Ocean, right? There is no doubt about that. Honestly, I think it's as simple as a matter of preference. And I suppose my preference in JoJo's characters is as simple as I like them to be funny. You'll definitely see that as we go along. Like, these next 3 parts, you guys can do the process of elimination. They all have multiple characters that no matter what, if there's one thing that you can count on, they'll put a smile on your face. They'll bring the silliness. They'll bring the whimsy. And I can't say that part 6 really did that, you know, but I do want to give Stone Ocean love because, oh my gosh, like, it was really like watching a Rocky just be in the zone. Like, oh my gosh, writing that ending was so good. Granted, it was bittersweet, but wow, well, Rocky really dialed in when it came to writing that ending. I think Stone Ocean had some lows. The lows were not as low as Stardust Crusaders, definitely not. But for the most part, it was an amazing watch, and it did have some of the highest peaks in JoJo's, some of the best episodes in all of JoJo's. That's why it's number 3. But now I want to move on to the second JoJo's part that I have in that amazing tier, and the third best JoJo's part in my opinion. We're in the top 3 now. This might be a hot take because I know a lot of people didn't agree with me in the comment section, but Golden Wind is one of the best parts in all of JoJo's, without a doubt. I'll start off by saying this: writing wise, I think it is the best JoJo's part, and the only other JoJo's part that even comes close is Stone Ocean. I think those are the 2 best written JoJo's parts. I do think that Golden Wind is slightly better, and I'll get into why. But one thing that Golden Wind does is it has amazing writing like Stone Ocean, but it also has characters that bring that joy and bring that smile to your face, like Narancia, like Mista, like Doppio. So I said the Golden Wind was top 2 writing wise. In my opinion, it is the best JoJo's part. When it comes to main cast, I think it is top 2 as well. In my eyes, it's either Stardust Crusaders or it's Stone Ocean. And sometimes I go back and forth on it, but I really think that Golden Wind probably has the best cast in all of JoJo's. Like, there's no way that you can look at Giorno, Mista, Bucciarati, Abacchio, Fugo, Narancia, and say, oh yeah, like, that's a pretty weak cast. But somehow some people do, and that's like the beauty of JoJo's. Like, we all just have such different preferences and opinions, because I remember in my Golden Wind video, people were saying that they thought Golden Wind was the worst JoJo's part, and I'm reading these comments and I'm like, did we watch the same? Like, are we serious? Great, like, I respect your opinion, like I'm sure you have your reasons, I have mine, right? But it's like, wow, like, that is such like a wild statement, because I watched Golden Wind and I was like, how could you not love this part? Again, that's just in my eyes. I'm sure you have your reasons for not liking Golden Wind, but I think it has the best JoBro. I think it has some of the best stands spread across the main cast and the antagonist. Maybe Giorno could be a little bit boring. If we're talking about characters that bring the whimsy, Giorno is most certainly not one of them. And I think the other major flaw is probably that Diavolo is kind of a weak main antagonist in comparison to the rest of JoJo's, because I think in a vacuum he's really good, but when you compare him to Poochie, Kira, Dio, it's no contest. But I think Stone Ocean having a weaker MC and a weaker antagonist is balanced out by the fact that the side cast is as strong as it's ever been in JoJo's. The stands are as strong as they've ever been in JoJo's. Even the intermittent, like just the random stand fights that you catch in the middle before getting to Diavolo, even those are as strong as they've ever been before. We had that whole Bucciarati and Mista fight on the train. That was really good. I still remember when Narancia bust out his Aerosmith stand for the first time. Like these are stand fights that are executed to perfection. In my opinion, Golden Wind did that villain formula best, because every single villain, every single antagonist that is not Diavolo advanced the story after their stand fight. So it feels like we are fighting for something. I mean, to put it into perspective, Risotto versus Doppio is a stand fight between two characters, none of whom are the main antagonist nor the main character. Like, these are two side characters, and it might be one of the best fights in all of JoJo's. That's how well Golden Wind did their stand fights. And truth be told, the more that I talk about Golden Wind, the more I feel like, look, this part could go into that peak cinema epicness awesome. You know, I wanted it to be a clear, even 2x2 split. No, screw it. I'm realizing now that Golden Wind and Stone Ocean, if I put something into tiers, that's because I think that they are roughly interchangeable. I don't think that Golden Wind and Stone Ocean are interchangeable at all now that I'm looking back at it. The only thing that's holding it back probably is the fact that Giorno is one of the weaker MCs, in my opinion, because we spend a lot of time, that's the character that we spend the most time with, so you would ideally want him to be one of the best. And I'll tell you right now that this next part that we're going to talk about might have the best character in the entire series. And I think that hint is good enough to lead people to believe that the next part that I'm talking about has to be Battle Tendency, because Joseph might be the best JoJo in this series. It's 1A, 1B in my opinion. You remember how I was talking about characters being whimsical and just being fun to watch? Trust me, you want to know where I got that idea from? You want to know why I started to love characters like that? I got it from Joseph. He was the original Whimsinator. I told you that after I watched Phantom Blood, I was left wanting more. I was left wanting to find out why people deemed JoJo's to be one of the greatest anime of all time. And then you know what followed that? 17 episodes of 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10 episodes. It was non-stop, not a single bad episode, just pure cinema. This was before stands were even introduced, so even talking about Battle Tendency feels like, you know, like I'm talking about the olden times. So on one hand, that might seem like a downside. Yeah, I think that stands are better than Hamon, but the positive that we get out of it is that we don't have the problem with Stardust Crusaders, and we don't have stand users that feel like filler. We don't have stand users that feel irrelevant, because instead of having stand users, we have the Pillarmen, and then we have a couple other antagonists like Stray, we have Stroheim, but both of them play a major role in Battle Tendency. Every single antagonist feels like they are important. And I'll go further and say that all 17 episodes of Battle Tendency are great at worst and peak at best. So what that means is that we have a very strong, very consistent JoJo's part, and unfortunately it is a very short part in comparison to the other JoJo's parts that are pushing 40 episodes long. You know, Battle Tendency is the second shortest JoJo's part, second only to Phantom Blood. But that's another thing that I love about Battle Tendency, is it doesn't overstay its welcome. It is able to outperform so many JoJo's parts in less episodes. That's what I love about Battle Tendency. And if I wanted to hop back and rewatch part 2, it would be easy, because it's short, it's sweet, it's peak, and maybe I'm a little bit biased, but you know, this is my list. You guys have your list, and I want to see them, of course. But this was the first time when watching JoJo's where I was like, okay, I understand it now. I see why people love JoJo's. And honestly, I'll say this Cars might be the weakest, and I say that lightly because I myself love Cars, but in the grand scheme of things, Diavolo, Dio, Kira, Poochie, like, come on. Picking out the worst antagonist in this group is like picking out the least attractive person in a lineup of supermodels. Santana is a strong antagonist. He was the first Pillarman that we got introduced to, and he left a strong impression because he looked like a killing machine. AC/DC was the other Pillarman, and he scared us, even though I do think that he's probably on the weaker side of the Pillarman. AC/DC killed their trainers and then showed up to Joseph's place and said, look, we're gonna fight right now. That's pretty badass. Wamu. Do I even have to speak for Wamu? Because he was the one that I thought that Wamu was going to be the final antagonist of part 2, but he wasn't. He was just phenomenal in his own right. Part 2 is really the only part that I can say maybe didn't have a dedicated final antagonist, but we really had a big 4. No other part can say that, because it's really Poochie over everyone. It's really Kira over everybody. It's Dio over everybody. But in part 2, it's the Pillarmen as a group, and I just love the Pillarmen, from Santana, Cars, Wamu, AC/DC. Even though some are cooler than others, I still loved every antagonist in part 2 regardless. Love the way that they handled their fights even without stands being introduced yet. By far some of the most creative fights in all of JoJo's, and that's all of these parts later. Like, that still holds up. Still some of the most creative fights in the entire series, some of the most enjoyable and best fights, and some of the best characters too. I remember the death of Caesar. That was the first time in JoJo's where something hit me and I'm like, wow, like that hurt. Like that meant something. That's pain. I didn't want to see Caesar die. Of course not. I love Caesar, and Caesar's another one of those characters that can claim to not be the main character but have one of the best fights in the series against Wamu. Like, you name it. Name a single facet of anime that part 2 doesn't do well. What, animation? But that's not something that I really value, because I'm able to extrapolate entertainment regardless if it's animated well or not. Like, seriously, I'm sitting here in my room thinking, what are some flaws about part 2? Like, what can I point to and say, that could have been better? I don't know, maybe the fact that there weren't any stands, but even still, without stands, I feel like it holds up. And maybe if part 2 had stands, that would have just been unfair. Maybe that would have been a cheat code if part 2 had stands, because that might really put it over the top. I don't know. Or maybe not. I don't know. Joseph had a pretty weak stand, but I digress. And I think the last flaw that I can point to, and I say that with air quotes, is maybe the fact that it's too short. I mean, I would have loved for part 2 to have been 39 episodes like every other JoJo's part past it, right? But also, I love the fact that it's short and it's sweet. It's concise and it's enjoyable, and every single episode was good, was great, was phenomenal. So I don't know, really, I don't know how Araki did it, but he did it. And not only did he do it, but he topped himself even further with the #1 JoJo's part, in my opinion. If you've been keeping up with my channel, you probably saw this coming. If you're new to my channel, hello, welcome. Make sure to like and subscribe if you're here, but I don't know, you probably guessed by the fact that Josuke is literally in the thumbnail. Diamond is Unbreakable, in my opinion, the JoJo's part that has it all. The amazing cast, the amazing antagonist, the amazing stand fights, the amazing main character, the amazing storytelling, plot, world building, colors, just visually looks amazing. Everything about it, just the part that has the most soul, in my opinion. I don't know how to describe that. Maybe if you're a Diamond is Unbreakable enthusiast such as I, you understand what I mean. I'll talk about it visually and aesthetically first, because from the first episode, I have to say I love the color palette. Very pastel looking, very vibrant, very colorful, which is funny because it almost contrast with the main antagonist, who is completely the opposite of colorful, but just enjoyable to look at when my brain is off. And when I turn my brain on, Diamond is Unbreakable gets 100 times better, because the plot is some of the best in JoJo's. It's up there with Stone Ocean and Golden Wind, and of course a lot of it revolves around the main antagonist Kira, who besides Dio is, in my opinion, the best antagonist in all of JoJo's. And it's a little funny because Kira, at the end of it, he's just a killer, right? He's just a serial killer. Pretty low stakes and compared to every other JoJo's part where, you know, the world is at stake, which is not just a trait to Kira, but a trait to part 4 and Diamond is Unbreakable as a whole. It just feels like it takes place in its own little world, and it gives Morio, all of the residents of Morio, every single character in Diamond is Unbreakable, it gives all of them so much personality. And a funny thing that I've never mentioned, I remember watching the events of Stone Ocean take place, and I'm like, I wonder what Morio's going through right now. I wonder what Josuke is doing right now, because I just love this little world that Araki built within this massive universe of JoJo's. Like, Diamond is Unbreakable takes place in its own little like microcosm, and that gives it so much charm, in my opinion, alone. And that's not even talking about everything that transpires in this microcosm, because we follow some of the most enjoyable characters in the series. Josuke, Koichi, Okuyasu could be a little bit silly. He kind of grew on me the more I thought about him. Rohan as well, and Rohan got a mention in Stone Ocean. That was like the one little hint that we got as to like how the residents of Morio are reacting to the events of Stone Ocean. But it really just is its own little world within the world of JoJo's, and I feel like you love it or you don't. And thankfully, I read a lot of the comments. I know a lot of y'all love it, and of course I do too. I mean, like, how could I not? It has my favorite main character in all of JoJo's. Josuke is like the perfect mix of a funny main character that could be serious when he wants to, because we saw how serious he got during that Kira fight. So he's almost like Joseph in that sense, but then they sprinkle in a little bit of like realness to his character with real problems, like his relationship with Joseph, who was his father that he had never met, and now he's struggling to come to terms with the fact that, look, he's gonna have to talk to Joseph at one point. Like, this is a real hard-hitting topic that affects a lot of people. It affects some of the people that I know. It feels very relatable. That's what I love about Josuke. He doesn't feel larger than life, and while it's cool to have some larger than life MCs, Josuke just feels like a school kid who got wrapped up in all of this. And you know what he did? He put a stop to it, because that fight with Kira, in my opinion, is the highest point, the peakest of the peak that JoJo's has ever been. I was on the edge of my seat for the entire Kira versus Josuke fight, and Kira is the other character that works hand in hand along Josuke to make part 4 the best part, in my opinion. Because who are the two characters that we usually focus on the most? It's gonna be the main character and the main antagonist. So when you come out and you fire off the best main character in all of JoJo's, in my opinion, and arguably has a case to be the best antagonist in all of JoJo's with Kira, and you put them together, that sounds like a recipe for the best part in all of JoJo's. So back to Kira, because he is just a small time serial killer in comparison to the rest of the antagonists, but he mixes in so many horror elements to part 4 that I just love, man. I love psychological thrillers, I love horror, I love mystery, love suspense, I love all of that. So of course, you know, this is just the part for me. It's as simple as that. I genuinely don't believe that there is a best part in JoJo's. It would be silly of me to claim that. Like, who am I, right? But when I do the math and I think about what I as a viewer like watching an anime, I look at part 4 and I'm like, it has every single element that I love in anime and more. I've never seen psychological thriller mixed in with some of the best fights in shonen that I've ever seen. It's amazing. Like, what a surreal combination. And slice of life too. Like, Diamond is Unbreakable is just very eclectic, and like all of the parts that it's taking, it's just aspects of anime that individually I just appreciate, and when put together it makes this like collage of phenomenalness and greatness, and something that I've never seen before, and something that, to be frank, rejuvenated my love for anime. That's something that every single part up here did. Golden Wind, Diamond is Unbreakable, Battle Tendency, just greatness. Some of the greatest fights that I've seen in any shonen. I love the way that the villain of the week formula was handled in this part, because they didn't feel meaningless. It almost felt like following a trail. We beat one stand user, now we have information that gets us closer to Kira, then we fight the next one, now we have some more information on Kira, then we fight the next one. It's like we're putting together a puzzle, and then that puzzle shatters when Kira changes his face in one of the greatest plot twists that I've ever seen in anime. And now we have to start this mystery element all over again. And by the way, that fight with Jotaro, Koichi, Kira, so chef's kiss. Like, part 4, wow, I love it. Wow, I would love to sit here and make an individual video about literally probably every single episode of part 4, and I might just do that depending on feedback. But as of right now, this video is at 33 minutes long. I'm getting carried away. If you made it this far, wow, I really appreciate you guys. Thank you. Like, honestly, it means so much to me. I don't want to take up too much of your time, at least more than I already have. I hope you all understand the gist and you see that my favorite JoJo's parts are such and such. I don't think that there is a bad JoJo's part, but thank you guys so much for watching 33 minutes of nonsense. And yeah, hope you have a great rest of your day. Take care, y'all. Peace.